Alright, let's hope this works. I filmed this video 4 times. My computer is just not responding. I don't know what is wrong, so I am filming this on my phone. I have pictures that I took of at the exhibit, so I wanted to show those, but because I am filming this on my phone, I can't do that. But I will talk about those. So I went to the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, and I was able to go through all the exhibitions that they had and really experience and learn about science, which I thought was super cool. So I went to a show, which I thought was really cool and interesting, and then I also found that the section about each and individual planets to be very interesting. So what I wanted to show was pictures talking about temperature, composition, atmosphere, and noticing change of the Earth, the display of Earth. I thought the Earth one was like the most informative out of all the planets, and also it's the most relatable since we live on Earth. And so it talked about how because our composition of our Earth is made out of iron and nickel, that has really helped form Earth. And then also it talked about meteorites and comets and how they contributed to our water that is on our planet, which I thought was really interesting. It also discussed how different planets, depending on where they are located, have different atmospheres, and because we are just right in the middle of between the sun and the other planets, we're able to have an atmosphere and have water on our planet because of our atmosphere. However, other planets do have atmospheres, but they're unfortunately not able to sustain life. And then there was another section about temperature and how each planet has different temperatures depending on how close they are to the sun. And it talked about how our atmosphere traps gases, so it warms the planet, so we have different temperatures. And I was thinking about global warming when it was talking about the greenhouse, because as our atmosphere is growing weaker, our planet is warming up more, and it's causing global warming and a lot of other disasters that have been happening. And then another thing it talked about was how we can notice things are changing on the planet due to volcanism, plate tectonics, erosion, weather erosion, and some planets such as Mercury and our moon don't have that because it doesn't have an atmosphere. And so moving on, I went to a show called Exploring Solar Systems, I think it was called. It was very cool. It was very kid driven, but I learned a lot from it, and I know that this project was meant for the natural disasters on Earth, but I learned about how other planets experience natural disasters, which I thought was really interesting since I didn't know that. I did take an astronomy course when I was in community college, but we primarily focused on the constellations and how people really use those to their advantage, but we didn't really go in depth about the different planets. And so they talked about the moon and how, because it has no atmosphere, it has no rain, it has no wind, so everything stays the same on the planet, nothing moves. And then they talked about Mars, which it has tornadoes and experiences dust devils, which I thought was really interesting. And I didn't know that there was tornadoes on Mars. I knew it was very windy, but I didn't know they actually have tornadoes. And there's also been findings of volcanic activity on Mars, which I was not aware that they could possibly have volcanic eruptions. And there's also found frozen CO2, which that's why a lot of scientists believe there's a possibility of life on Mars. But because of the wind storms are so severe, you would have to find a way to get around that. And then moving on to Jupiter, which this was what I was just like, what? The giant red spot is actually a 100-year-old hurricane storm, which I was just fascinated with. And apparently the diameter of the hurricane is 3 times the size of Earth. So if we put 3 Earths together, that would be the size of the red spot, which I just thought was crazy, because if you could imagine having a storm that big over Earth, Earth would be non-existent, since it had been taken over with winds and rain. And then also the storm, it's just so crazy that it has over 400-mile-per-hour winds. And then they also talked about the Jupiter moons, 2 out of the 4, which I thought was interesting, since they didn't touch base on other planets. They decided to focus on the moons, and one of the moons, Io, is one of the most volcanic, activity form, because it's not a planet. Moon in the solar system, it's one of the most active. It has the most active volcanoes. It has over 400 active volcanoes, and because it is made out of sulfur, it releases sulfur, which smells. And then also they touched based on Titan, and how the atmosphere is 2 times thicker than Earth's. So because it does have an atmosphere, the moon has water, pretty large bodies of water. Because I was in Chicago, they related it to Lake Superior. It's about 2 sizes of Lake Superior, and then because there are large bodies of water, it forms clouds, and the clouds have rain. So because the bodies of water are primarily consistent of methane, they have methane rainstorms, which I thought was really interesting. And I also talked to one of the experts on site about solar flares and meteorites and how they can impact us on Earth. And the guy was so nice, and he told me that it's pretty rare occasion that it could happen, but there is a possibility that a solar flare from the sun could affect our satellites here on Earth, which would not be the greatest, since we depend on them pretty daily. If they were to move our satellites, we could lose our GPS systems, we could lose cell phone activity, TV, a lot of science-related incidents, and also we would lose stuff that helps us track the weather and help us with space discovery. I also talked to him about meteorites and how they can cause destruction to Earth, and he said it's pretty infrequent where a big meteorite cause destruction where it destroys a house or kills someone or anything crazy like that. But there has been some incidents where they actually had one of the meteorites that went through a two-story house in Chicago, and then he also told me about an incident where a guy was swimming in a pool and he got hit by a meteorite and died, and he said it was pretty infrequent, but it is a possibility that it could cause. So maybe they need to start selling meteorite insurance just in case that happens. Well, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please let me know. I really enjoyed taking this field trip to the planetarium, and I came out learning a lot, and I thought it was cool. Thank you so much.